Hi, it's Charlie Minato from halfwheel.com, and I am back with another humidor review, and it's the Boveda Acrylic Humidor, specifically the large Boveda Acrylic Humidor, and more precisely, the 2021 version of the large Boveda Acrylic Humidor. And that's because this humidor, which retails for $199, is replacing one of my favorite humidors, and that would be the original Boveda Acrylic Humidor. And I think it makes more sense to start with this humidor before I talk about this one, because not only is it replacing it, but also it is remarkably similar. And, I'm going to nitpick some differences between the two. So this is obviously super unique. It's entirely made of plastic, of acrylic, which means it's see-through. It also means there's no wood in it, so you don't have to worry about seasoning or wood warping or any of that stuff. It's obviously fairly modern in terms of its styling, and it functions quite a bit different than a typical humidor would. The end goal is still the same. It's to store cigars in, but Boveda basically said, we're going to make a fancy Tupperware container just made for cigars. And the way they went about doing this is it's entirely different, and it's apparent from the moment you take it out of the box and the moment you try using it, because the lid is entirely removable, which is a pretty rare feature for a humidor. Now, you'll see ours got engraved. We purchased this one from Stogie's back in the day, and the Houston shop has an engraver, and so they engraved it for us, I think without telling us, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a super nice feature. I suppose you could probably engrave, so you could definitely engrave some wood, but maybe not with a laser. But that's what happened here. The lid here is convex, so that means that this top piece is going to be a little bit taller than the edges. You can see there's a handle cut out right here, or maybe you can't, because it's all clear, the autofocus just has a ton of problems with it. There are 4 magnets or metal pieces, one in each corner. They're interestingly on the side, and those line up with corresponding pieces right here. And this humidor seals pretty well. It doesn't necessarily have the air swooshing effect. Part of that is because of the way the lid falls down. You got to place it down as opposed to kind of just letting it fall down. But you can see, and because it's entirely clear, you can get a real sense of how well this thing seals, the way the lips work, and things like that. And the uniqueness doesn't stop there. I'd argue the outside of not using any wood, the most unique feature is this tray. And so humidors have trays. It's not anything new, but most humidors, the way the tray works is usually there's like a bottom piece that's got most of the cigar storage, and then there's a tray that's a little bit shorter, and the tray usually just kind of stacks on top of it. This humidor is designed that all the cigars get stored inside of this tray. And that's great if you want to like present cigars to people. You can just bring over the tray like this. And it also makes for a, I think, cleaner appearance, particularly because it's all see-through. And there are some interesting parts of the tray. So I don't know how well you can tell. We'll probably get some close-up shots, but there's like a castle appearance up here, and that's because of these dividers. Now, the dividers are super well integrated into the overall design, so there are all these holes on the bottom that are cut out, and the divider piece can move across the humidor, and it slots into the holes. So if you see right there, there are little tabs, and those are designed to go into the holes. And so it locks into place a little bit sturdier, as I try to not damage a whole bunch of cigars, than your typical felt bottom or felt lined pieces of removable dividers. And then the bottom of the humidor is more or less just a big rectangular box. You can see there's nothing holding the Boveda packets in place. Boveda recommends 3 packets, and that's how many that are in here. The only thing that's just kind of disrupting that flow is in each corner there's a little riser, and so that serves 2 purposes. One, it means that the Boveda packs won't get smashed by the tray when they go into the humidor, and the second purpose is that it helps to level out the tray, so that way the lid can go on properly, but also so from an aesthetics purpose it looks the same. So this humidor has been out for years, or was out for years. It was introduced in 2015. But last year, Boveda announced that they were replacing this and the smaller version of the humidor with these new humidors. And I was told the reason why was because Boveda was not happy with the quality they were getting from their supplier. And I'm guessing there was other supply chain issues as well. But Boveda found a new supplier. It also updated the design of the humidor. So the most obvious thing is there's now wood. There's a cedar tray, but that's not the first change. The first change is actually the lid. It's flat, so it is now a straight up shoebox appearance. These hole cutout, or not cutouts, but these inlets that are designed to help you pick up the lid, give you more of a tactile feel. They've been made a little bit larger, specifically taller, so it's easier for my fingers to fit inside, as has the holes here on the tray itself. But obviously the big change, the tray is now cedar. And that means that, means people are going to ask questions. Do you need to season the tray? It's a question that I asked. Boveda originally was very adamant. You do not need to season it. And then a couple months later, they were like, well, maybe you should season it. We're looking into it. And they settled on the response that you should not need to season it, but you can if you'd like, and it won't damage it. I would take them at their word. If anything, it would seem like they would want to say you need to season it so they could sell you more Boveda packets. The fact that they're saying it's not necessary leads me to believe that unless you're in super dry climates or you leave this out somewhere where it's super dry, that this should be fine. But if you're concerned, you obviously can use either Boveda seasoning packets. You probably can get away with just using the regular 69% packets or whatever you standard use in there. Just put a couple of them in or 3 of them in before you put your cigars in, and I'm guessing you'll be fine. But, you know, your mileage may vary. There are some other small changes to the tray. The holes remain, the ventilation slots for the removable dividers to go in, but they are now larger, and that also means there are fewer of them. And the dividers have slightly changed, and something that people will rarely ever notice. There were holes in the acrylic one. I don't know what purpose they served. There are no longer holes, but they still work basically the same or exactly the same. They slot into the holes there. The other small change on the bottom is that these riser pieces are a little bit larger. This should matter for absolutely no one, but if you're looking for differences, that's one of them. As it turns out, I forgot what I was supposed to do at the end of that take. So dimensions-wise, the humidors are basically the same. This one is slightly taller than that one, but they're otherwise the same dimensions. It's 14.5 inches exterior-wise from here to here. It's 9 inches from the front to the back, and it's 4 1/16 inches from the bottom to the top. Both humidors have on the bottom, they've got some rubber feet, so that way the humidor doesn't scratch the surface and also is a little bit sturdier. I did not measure the interior dimensions specifically. I just measured the tray because all the humidor or all the cigars are designed to go into the tray in this humidor. So if you're curious, it is 13.75 inches wide, 8 7/16 inches from the front to the back, and then 3 inches from the bottom floor of the tray to the top piece here, the usable piece here. I put that into the humidor discount humidor calculator, and it produced a result of 75 Robustos, which is ironically exactly what Boveda advertises this for. 75 cigars. The smaller one they advertise for 20 cigars, or depending on which size cigars, can fit up to double Coronas, but obviously you put double Coronas in, you're going to have less of them or fewer of them than you would for Robustos. So if you're familiar with my previous humidor reviews, you'll know there's this long section with testing and all sorts of stuff like that, but I'm actually not going to do that because I didn't do the same exact testing I've done with the last 7 humidor reviews that have been posted here, and I'm going to go right into the pros and cons. So the first thing I would say is that it works really, really well, better than pretty much any wooden humidor you're ever going to have. It's not to say I did not test this humidor. I did, but the testing procedure that I was using, a lot of it doesn't really make much sense. At the time that I purchased this, Boveda was saying don't season the humidor, so I didn't. But I did put 3 Boveda packets in here and no cigars, and 2 sensor push devices. That way, if they failed, we had backups. And I left it alone, and then I put some cigars in it. I actually started using it at one point. And over the last month, when I've been opening and closing this probably a couple times, maybe 3 times a week, to give you an idea of the performance of this humidor, there's 3 69% Boveda packs in here. Over the course of a 30-day period where this humidor was being opened and there were cigars inside of it, the humidity inside of the humidor ranged from 67.6% all the way to 71.3% with an average of 69.3%. That is very good, and I would be surprised if you can find a wooden humidor, particularly one that's being opened and closed and has cigars in it, that could produce that kind of performance. It's not the same as a sealed Boveda or sealed container with a Boveda inside of it, because this wasn't sealed, but it's pretty damn good, and it's hard to beat. And that's certainly part of the first part of this, which is that this humidor is going to outperform a wooden humidor. But the sort of 1B part to that is that the maintenance on this humidor is also going to be dramatically less than what it would be for a traditional wooden humidor. Seasoning, obviously, we went over that. up to you about whether or not you want to use it, but doesn't seem to be necessary. You don't have to worry about the wood, the edges warping, or what happens if the corners don't get aligned. There's just a whole bunch of stuff you're not going to have to worry about. And because it works better, it also means that replacing the Bovedas isn't going to happen as much as it would for a traditional humidor. And I think it's a big win, if not the biggest win, for this humidor. Number two would be the sort of other very obvious trait of this humidor, which is that it looks a lot different. Now, I don't like this look as much as the original one, but I still like it a lot more than most humidors. I like modern looking humidors. There's some wood humidors I do like the look of, but a lot of them I find to be quite boring. This one is different, and really there's nothing like being able to walk over and just see the cigars, particularly when they're not in cellophane. You just see the wrappers. It's a much more appealing thing than just some scratched up piece of wood. And so this look is still better, even if it's not my favorite of the series so far. The third thing is something that may not be very obvious to most people. It certainly wasn't something I had thought about until recently, which is that this is really efficient. The walls on this humidor are super thin compared to what they would be on a wooden humidor. And what that means is for the amount of volume that the total exterior space takes up, the inside gets most of that back. You're not going to see half-inch thick pieces. There's nothing in the lid that's going to prevent you from stacking cigars all the way up. It's a super efficient design, and so if you're tight on space and you could fit this in here, you'll probably be able to fit more cigars in this humidor than you would in a traditional wooden humidor. That being said, I do have some issues with this humidor, and it started when I took this humidor out of the box and we were photographing it. The front of this humidor is covered, not the humidor, but the tray is covered with like glue stains, and this is a problem. Sorry, not the front, the side. The side has these glue stains over here. This is a problem that happens on humidors. It happens particularly at price points like this, as there we go. And I'm a bit surprised from Boveda that it happened, and it's sloppy, and it's not great. I will say, these two humidors, the ones that are on the table, are not the only Boveda acrylic humidors I've purchased over the years. I believe that I have purchased 3 of them. I may have purchased 4, done 4 transactions. I have received an extra humidor because Boveda, when we ordered this humidor, Boveda said they were shipping new humidors, not the old style. We ended up getting an old style humidor, and Boveda then shipped and replaced it with the new one. But one other humidor beyond this one of the old ones showed up with some cracked acrylic. It was pretty bad, actually. These humidors are not immune from having issues, whether caused at the factory or caused via shipping. And so just be aware of that. It's another plug. You should go to your local store, see a humidor in person. That way you don't come home with, unexpected surprises. But it is something to be wary about. I'm sure if you mentioned to Boveda that you were not satisfied because there was glue residue on the side of your humidor, that they would replace it. I'm generally fine with it. Plus, it's a review. You get what you get. You get what you ship to us, or what we bought and you shipped. So, number 2 on my cons is also the same thing as the number 2 on my pros. It's the aesthetic. I don't particularly care in comparison for this look versus the other one. The other one is just so much more dynamic, so much more dramatic. To me, this is kind of like a hybrid. That one is just the full bore. We're going for a humidor that does not look like a humidor. And you walk up to it, you can see the cigars. Just a much more pleasurable experience than this one with the wooden tray. Obviously, looks are always going to be subjective, so take that for what it's worth. If you are wondering, I don't know how this could possibly be relevant, but it was a question that I had. You can fit you can sort of do a mix match of these. The only way that this works, as far as I've been able to tell, is you can put the old tray inside of the new humidor. The new tray won't fit in the old side of the humidor. You can't swap the lids out, but you can do that. Once again, I don't know why that would possibly be relevant, particularly because Boveda doesn't sell the trays by themselves, although I wish that they did. The third con that I would say is something that I find a bit baffling. It's the cedar. The whole, not the whole, but a big part of the reason why I love that humidor and why I recommended the original humidor to so many people was because there was no wood. It meant that you didn't have to worry about seasoning in any capacity. It meant you didn't have to worry about the smell or the aroma of cedar imparting it into your cigars. It was going to be as maintenance-free as you could possibly imagine a humidor. Basically, just every once in a while, open up the humidor, take the tray out, feel the Boveda packs. If you start to feel them getting crunchy, replace them. That's it. Now they've added cedar, and I'm sure Boveda went at lengths to trying to figure out what the right cedar was, how much cedar, what the thickness, etc., 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 to try to limit down the maintenance. But it still smells like cedar. I can smell it right now. It still is cedar. It's still going to be porous. It's not ever going to be what that acrylic piece was in terms of the complete carefree maintenance aspect that it presented. And it's something that I really find baffling. I'm guessing that Boveda, if they could, would probably continue to sell the all acrylic one, but I'm guessing that it's probably just too difficult for them to get that piece right. So like 12 years ago, maybe, Boveda had two names. There was Humidipack, the original name, and then there was Boveda, which was the new name, and there was Boveda because they're from Minnesota and they mispronounce words all the time. And it was confusing, as was their marketing campaigns. I never really understood it. For me, Boveda was the easiest way to describe it was it just works. You take it out of the plastic bag, you stick it in your humidor, it does its thing. And the humidor has very much been that way. Certainly the original one, and this one as well. This is as close to any other humidor, to that humidor, as any other humidor is ever going to be, as far as I'm concerned, unless somebody makes a very similar acrylic humidor. And that's because this is not a regular humidor. Boveda has removed the fault points that plague a traditional humidor by removing wood, which is what you think about with a traditional humidor. And when you do that and you find a better material to use, you end up with a humidor that is just far less troubling as a wooden humidor, even a wooden humidor that costs 10 times what this does. So I still highly recommend this humidor. There is one major caveat, which is that the aesthetics are not what people think of when they think of a humidor, and they're not for everyone. But if you can learn to live with it, quite frankly, if you like the aesthetics, I think you'll love the end result because it's just so much easier to use this humidor. It's very similar to Boveda's products compared to a traditional wooden humidor, where sometimes it's more art than science. This is very much more science than art. Now, if you're looking for more reviews of humidors, ones that actually kind of look like what people think humidors look like, you can check out halfwheel.com. We also review all sorts of other cigar accessories like lighters, cutters, some cutters that look like cigar cutters and other ones that don't, as well as cigars themselves. And pretty much every day of the year on halfwheel.com, we are also writing about what's happening in and around the cigar industry.